Chapter 9, Part 2 of Bel Ami, or The History of a Scoundrel. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. Bel Ami, or The History of a Scoundrel, by Guy de Maupassant. Translator unknown. Chapter 9, Marriage, Part 2. The 10th of May arrived. Thinking a religious ceremony unnecessary, as they had issued no invitations, the couple were married at a magistrate's and took the 6 o'clock train for Normandy. As the train glided along, Duroy, sitting in front of his wife, took her hand, kissed it, and said, "When we return, we will dine at Chateau sometimes." She murmured, "We shall have a great many things to do," in a tone which seemed to say, "We must sacrifice pleasure to duty." He retained her hand, wondering anxiously how he could manage to caress her. He pressed her hand slightly, but she did not respond to the pressure. He said, "It seems strange that you should be my wife." She appeared surprised. "Why?" "I do not know. It seems droll. I want to embrace you, and I am surprised that I have the right." She calmly offered him her cheek, which he kissed as he would have kissed his sister's. He continued, "The first time I saw you, you remember, at that dinner to which I was invited at Forestier's, I thought, sacristi, if I could only find a wife like that. And now I have one." She glanced at him with smiling eyes. He said to himself, "I am too cold. I am stupid. I should make more advances." And he asked, "How did you make Forestier's acquaintance?" She replied with provoking archness, "Are we going to Rouen to talk of him?" He colored. "I am a fool. You intimidate me." She was delighted. Impossible." He seated himself beside her. She exclaimed, "Ah, a stag!" The train was passing through the forest of Saint-Germain, and she had seen a frightened deer clear an alley at a bound. As she gazed out of the open window, Duroy, bending over her, pressed a kiss upon her neck. For several moments she remained motionless. Then raising her head, she said, "You tickle me, stop." But he did not obey her. She repeated, "Stop, I say." He seized her head with his right hand, turned it toward him, and pressed his lips to hers. She struggled, pushed him away, and repeated, "Stop." He did not heed her. With an effort, she freed herself and, rising, said, "Georges, have done. We are not children. We shall soon reach Rouen." "Very well," said he gaily. "I will wait." Reseating herself near him, she talked of what they would do on their return. They would keep the apartments in which she had lived with her first husband, and Duroy would receive Forestier's position on La Vie Francaise. In the meantime, forgetting her injunctions and his promise, he slipped his arm around her waist, pressed her to him, and murmured, "I love you dearly, my little Mad." The gentleness of his tone moved the young woman, and leaning toward him, she offered him her lips. As she did so, a whistle announced the proximity of the station. pushing back some stray locks upon her temples, she exclaimed: "We are foolish." He kissed her hands feverishly and replied: "I adore you, my little Made." On reaching Rouen, they repaired to a hotel where they spent the night. The following morning, when they had drunk the tea placed upon the table in their room, Duroy clasped his wife in his arms and said: "My little Made, I feel that I love you very, very much." She smiled trustfully and murmured as she returned his kisses: "I love you too, a little." The visit to his parents worried Georges. Although he had prepared his wife, he began again: "You know they are peasants, real, not sham comic opera peasants." She smiled. "I know it, you have told me often enough. We shall be very uncomfortable. There is only a straw bed in my room. They do not know what hair mattresses are at Canteleu." She seemed delighted. "So much the better. It would be charming to sleep badly when near you, and to be awakened by the crowing of the cocks." He walked toward the window and lighted a cigarette. The sight of the harbor, of the river filled with ships, moved him, and he exclaimed: "Egad, but that is fine!" Madeleine joined him, and placing both of her hands on her husband's shoulder, cried: "Oh, how beautiful! I did not know that there were so many ships." An hour later they departed in order to breakfast with the old couple, who had been informed several days before of their intended arrival. Both Duroy and his wife were charmed with the beauties of the landscape presented to their view, and the cabman halted in order to allow them to get a better idea of the panorama before them. As he whipped up his horse, Duroy saw an old couple, not 100 meters off, approaching, and he leaped from the carriage, crying: "Here they are! I know them." The man was short, corpulent, florid, and vigorous, notwithstanding his age. The woman was tall, thin, and melancholy, with stooping shoulders, a woman who had worked from childhood, who had never laughed nor jested. Madeleine too alighted and watched the couple advance, with a contraction of her heart she had not anticipated. They did not recognize their son in that fine gentleman, and they would never have taken that handsome lady for their daughter-in-law. They walked along, past the child they were expecting, without glancing at the city folks. Georges cried with a laugh: "Good day, Father Duroy." Both the old man and his wife were struck dumb with astonishment. The latter recovered her self-possession first and asked: "Is it you, son?" The young man replied: "Yes, it is I, Mother Duroy," and approaching her, he kissed her upon both cheeks and said: "This is my wife." The two rustics stared at Madeleine as if she were a curiosity, with anxious fear, combined with a sort of satisfied approbation on the part of the father, and of jealous enmity on that of the mother. Monsieur Duroy Senior, who was naturally jocose, made so bold as to ask with a twinkle in his eye: "May I kiss you too?" His son uttered an exclamation, and Madeleine offered her cheek to the old peasant, who afterwards wiped his lips with the back of his hand. The old woman, in her